Welcome, everyone, to the Media Row podcast here on a Wednesday. Drake taking on Evansville, the women getting set to play tomorrow night, and a lot to get to just in the Valley as a whole, as we're only now, 8 days away from Arch Madness in St. Louis for the men's tournament. Women play the week after in Evansville for their Missouri Valley Conference tournament, but both tournaments should be really exciting. A lot of really great players and teams and storylines that have built up throughout the season. A basketball season that I've talked to a lot of people about of it just flew on by. Like, I thought with, the whole iHeart thing, I thought that it would slow things down in the sense of, I actually get to watch these basketball games now. I have more time on my hands. It'll feel like it's slowed down and I can be a fan again. And it's almost been the opposite. It feels more like I've blinked and all of a sudden we're in March and I'm going to blink again and the season's going to be over and I'm going to be ready to be watching the Masters. So a lot of exciting stuff to get to today's show. But before we get to any of that, you guys want a car update? You want to know what I've been dealing with for about a week now, and it's going to be 2 weeks because I'm not getting it back for another 3 to 5 days. I have this Mercedes. I know, high roller, right? Got it used about 3 years ago because I was leaving. I was part-time at WHO doing the Simon Conway show, was leaving, and the power steering went out, and my Impala at the time basically was smoking on the interstate and was basically about to explode. So got rid of that, got a used Mercedes, and it's been awesome. Love this car. But all of a sudden, like I've talked about on the show before, all of a sudden we're having issues with it, and the same issues keep happening. I had to miss a few Drake games because of it. And then finally get it fixed. We're ready to rock and roll, and it breaks down again. So I send it back to my place, and they're like, we can't figure this out. You're going to have to send it to the Mercedes dealership. So, long story long, basically they found out the issue. Have to get parts from Texas, somewhere in Texas, Fort Worth, I think. And it's going to take 3 to 5 days, then fix that, and it's going to be a huge pain in the butt to fix. And it's going to be a pain in my ass to pay for. And so basically now I'm just hoping I have a car and a little bit of money left over to even be able to go to St. Louis. I should be able to. Hopefully we get things figured out. We'll keep you guys updated. But yeah, that's what I've been dealing with all week long. And maybe 2025 is the year still for Media Row, but maybe it's not the year for Justin. It's been a rough start to the year. But that being said, I do appreciate everyone that comments, subscribes, and talks to me about this podcast. I'm trying my best, and I appreciate everyone working with me and all the nice comments, the feedback, what I can do better at too. I appreciate that as well. Always constructive criticism guy. I love that. So I really appreciate everyone out there. So thank you so much. And as we continue to grow this thing, but let's jump into it as we are 8 days away from St. Louis. Let's go into the Missouri Valley Conference standings on the men's side with 2 games left. We had, 4 teams play last night, with both Murray State and Southern Illinois getting wins over Indiana State and Illinois State. So those 4 teams only have 1 game left, but the rest of the conference, 2 games left, a lot of games tonight. But here's how your standings look at this point in the season. Drake, 2 games above UNI and Bradley, so they have more than solidified them as the number 1 team in the conference. A win tonight earns them their first outright regular season Missouri Valley Conference title since that 2008 season. But 2 games above UNI and Bradley. Both teams have won 2 in a row. UNI and Bradley face off on Sunday, and that's going to be a huge game in just terms of seeding. It's not going to be anything drastic where if you lose, you're having to play on a Thursday. It's nothing like that, but you still want to try to be the highest seed possible. And UNI, they take on Bradley on Sunday, and these two teams before that, Panthers play UIC, Bradley at Valpo. Just a huge Sunday battle in Peoria where the Braves are just really hoping to even out the series. They got smoked against UNI on the road earlier this year, which, come to find out, I didn't know this until speaking with a few people really connected with the Bradley side of things. That game where you're watching it and you're going, man, Duke Dean looks off, just having a bad game. He was battling strep throat in that game. I had no idea. And that's why, he looked so off. And, talked to a handful of people that were there at the game, and they said, yeah, like, you look at him and he's like, that dude shouldn't have been playing. But so now you have a healthy Bradley team going up against a UNI team that, yes, lost to Drake, but still has been, I think, in the month of February, the hottest team in the conference. So it should be a fun one. Panthers have the size to battle with Darius Hannah and the bigs at Bradley, so should be a fun one. You have Belmont, they're sitting at the 3 spot. UIC at the 5 spot. Illinois State and Murray State tied for 6. Evansville, who plays Drake tonight, at 7. SIU, who has really turned around. I mean, I think from that second half of January to right now, they've been one of the more improved teams in the conference. They started off the year kind of down below with Missouri State, but were able to adjust, trying to get back into winning side of things. I think they're still, next year I think they'll be better, but it's still just a team trying to figure out their identity. But you have SIU at 8, Indiana State, who's lost 3 in a row, tied for the most lost so far in the Missouri Valley Conference to this point. They're at 9, and Indiana State, man, a team that I had so much hope for at the start of the season because they started off hot like Drake did, and they had a lot of the similarities as Drake with new head coach, losing all your star players. But they were able to really get off to a fast start and play teams like Bradley really close. And then it just kind of fell apart. You have Teal, who's been a beast, but that's about it. That team just doesn't have depth. They don't get consistency. While Drake has a great defense to make up for if it's just Bennett Sturt's playing great or if they don't have great depth at a night or great offensive balance on a given night, Indiana State doesn't have anything to really kind of lean on. They don't have a great defense. They're not a great rebounding team. They turn over the ball too much. And then, like I said, not great offensive balance. But Indiana State, 3 losses in a row after losing to Murray State last night. They're sitting at 9. Valpo, they've won 2 in a row. Valpo, a team that, again, when they're at home, they look completely different than when they're on the road. Still a team that could cause some troubles. I wouldn't be shocked if they're playing Friday. I think they'll win their first game in the conference tournament. And then Missouri State, 3 losses in a row, sitting in last place. Can't say too much that we've already said of their starting 5 is legit, just no depth. And I mean, just not the great farewell tour they wanted. But with the seeding or standings right now, I saw this on Twitter at Matt Hackman on Twitter. He does this for every conference. And so he crunches the numbers and tries to figure out the projections for seeding. And he runs 4,096 possible simulations. And this was as of Monday. This was his last one over the weekend. So, of course, the games against Murray State, SIU, Indiana State, Illinois State, those really didn't, those won't change too much of the seedings, but this is what the simulations have. They have Drake 100%. Drake has locked up that first seed. Bradley is sitting in second at 62%. UNI sitting in third at 62%. And, of course, those flip-flop for the 2 and 3 spot. Belmont more than secured the 4th spot with 93%. Illinois State, a team I would not be entirely shocked if they're playing in the championship. It would be a surprise, but again, I don't think I'd be taken back and being like, oh my God, couldn't see this happening. Illinois State has played some really good basketball. And when you have a guy like Chase Walker, that after I put out the video on Monday of talking about that, Bennett Sturt solidified himself as the unanimous Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year. People are like, don't forget on Chase Walker. I love Chase Walker, and I've talked about him quite a bit this year. But Bennett is on another level. That's besides the point. Talking about Illinois State, 73% chance to fill out that 5th seed. I just think they're a gritty team. I mean, beat Bradley with a bloody point guard. You have all this lining up to be kind of a special team, and a team that I would be nervous for Drake to play in the conference tournament, because beating a team twice in a year is tough, let alone trying to beat them 3 times in a team as tough and physical as Illinois State. UIC sitting at the 6th seed, 69%. Murray State, 68% in the 7th seed. The 8th seed is really the seed that has the most. We don't know what will happen. You have SIU sitting there, highest probability at 33% chance to get that 8th seed. Evansville at 26, Indiana at 24. Kind of don't know who's going to fall in that 8th seed. Evansville's better projected to finish in the 9th seed at 46%. SIU at the 10 spot, Valpo at the 11, and then clearly Missouri State sitting there in last place. Just a team that has really, really struggled here in their farewell tour. But that's kind of how the games are looking at to shape up here next week in St. Louis, the seedings, I should say. And again, really excited. Hopefully, no more car troubles, and we'll be able to make it all work out and go down there and be able to cover this awesome tournament. Went 2 years ago, and it was one of my favorite sporting moments I've ever had in my life. It was so cool. I've wanted to go to that since I can remember, and to be able to cover that, it was amazing. And while the Big 12 tournament was awesome too, and another great experience and something that I'll always remember, and covering Iowa State, and they win the title last year, that was always awesome. But there's just the Arch Madness. I think it's because that's the opening to the tournament. That's the first conference tournament of the year is Missouri Valley, and I think that's so cool for a mid-major. It helps out a team like Drake. If Drake is able to run the table and win the whole thing, they're going to need those 2 weeks off to be able to get ready for the NCAA tournament when you have guys like Bennett Sturts and Mitch Muscari playing 40 minutes a game. But definitely really excited to try to get down to St. Louis. So hopefully see you guys there. And if you see me, make sure to stop by and say hi. So now moving on to the Missouri Valley Conference women's basketball standings. They have 4 games left. So no, projections on seedings just yet. It's more than likely Missouri State. They're in first right now with a 14-2 conference record. They've won 6 in a row. Drake, they would really need Missouri State to kind of fall apart in these last 4 games. But definitely it's looking like, just with the talent the Bears have and how good they've played all year long, this is a team that isn't going to lose 4 in a row. If they drop 1, so be it, but I do not see them losing more than 1 here in the Final 4. Murray State and Drake, those two are really battling out for second right now. Racers play Missouri State on Thursday, but outside of that, they have a pretty easy Final 4 games. 3 out of the 4 have a losing record that Murray State has to play. Drake, on the other hand, while they do play a 4-23 Indiana State team, they kind of have a tougher Final 4 games because they take on UNI, and only 2 out of the 4 have a losing record that they've play out. But Murray State and Drake, they've been at each other's throats all year long. Murray State taking the game and dominating Drake at the Knapp Center earlier this season. Then Drake going on the road and beating Murray State. You have the, Denenbeer Young Player of the Year conversation in the conference. Two great coaches that have great respect for one another. You have kind of an offensive powerhouse in Murray State and a team that in Drake that loves to push the pace and get some shots up against a Murray State team, and really one of the few teams that can compete at the offensive level that Murray State has had here in the conference so far. So really, really exciting to see how that second spot fills out. At fourth, you have a tie of Illinois State and Belmont. 6, UNI and UIC. UNI trying to get a win against Drake on Saturday. UNI almost pulled off the game against Missouri State. Just a rare off day by Maya McDermott. She was in single digits for a better part of that game, and wasn't even like she was, Missouri State was doing a crazy great job of guarding her. They're a good defensive team and was playing physical with her, but the ball just did not fall that night. But UNI barely falling to Missouri State earlier. Now they're tied with UIC in that 6th spot. Valpo at 8 with 7-9, Bradley 5-11, and then just junk at the bottom. Like in the men's side where we said, man, that 8th seed, that is where you're going to see really a battle and kind of, a handful of teams that have an opportunity to move up or down there. In the women's side, not as well as, continuity. You have 3 teams at 2-14, Indiana State, Evansville, SIU, and they're just battling not for last at this point. Really, really tough bottom of the conference. The women's season, it hasn't been completely, the teams on top have more than stayed on top throughout the season. UNI's kind of fallen in and out of that top spot. Belmont, a team that was tied for first at one point, they've now lost 4 in a row. They're dropping down to that 4th spot. But other than those 2 teams, for the most part, everyone has kind of stayed in their spot. Drake, Murray State have battled in that 1 and 2 spot. UNI has sometimes found their way into the 3rd spot. Missouri State has basically been one of the 2 best teams in the conference. So really, Belmont and UNI are the only 2 teams that kind of bounced around a little. But Drake takes on 4-23 Indiana State tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the Knapp Center. We'll be there. We'll be there. It is in the Knapp Center. Had a little brain fart there for a second, but we'll be there. Make sure to stop by, say hi, and try to get out there. If you haven't seen a women's game, they don't have many coming up, and their last home game is during Arch Madness, so it's going to be hard to balance those 2 out. So try to get to the game on Thursday against Indiana State. You're going to see Drake's offense really implode because they're coming off of a tough loss to Missouri State. The seniors know they don't have many home games left, so they're going to play with an extra oomph and just trying to get back into the groove of March, because you need to put a pounding on Indiana State. You can't have any hiccups, and I don't expect Pullman's team to do so. So try to get out there and see the Drake game on Thursday. So moving to, though, the game tonight, since we've gotten through the standings, since we've kind of gotten through the seeding, you've had to hear me vent about my car. Let's get into the game that matters for Drake tonight, and that's a game against Evansville. And you win this, you make history. For the Drake Bulldogs, if they are able to take down Evansville, it'd be the first time since that 2008 magical run where they have won the Missouri Valley Conference regular season title outright. No ties, no nothing. Drake is your champion in the regular season. And if they're able to do that, it would be an amazing run, because it has been 17 years since they won that regular season title outright in 08. They've had 7 coaches in that time span. They've had 7 losing seasons, including 3 where they only had 10 or less wins. Now, on their 7th straight season of 20-plus wins, they're sitting at 25-3. Third best start by a Drake head coach in their first year, and the team ranks 58th in the net right now and 59th in the Ken Palm. This team has turned it around. This whole program has turned itself around from always playing on Thursdays in St. Louis to now being 8 days away, expecting to play on Sunday. That is a turnaround, and Drake just needs to take care of business tonight and complete history. And the last time Drake played Evansville, it was all Bulldogs in the Knapp Center, 63-40. Bulldogs have won 12 straight now against Evansville. The 40 points that Evansville score was the lowest Drake has held a Division I opponent since 1992. And Evansville, a good team at home, and a team that, again, Drake can't look past just with the style of play, and I've said that 1,000 times. But this is a team that is dealing with health issues. They lost junior guard Tayshawn Comer, who averaged 16 points per game, only scored 11. I apologize. Comer is still playing. I had that wrong. Cam Hafner is the junior guard who averaged 12 points, 10 points against Drake, but hasn't played since January 22nd against UIC. They still have Tayshawn, who's their leading scorer, but they lost two of their best guards. And a Drake team that loves to get up on the guards, loves to play physical defense, and has basically one of the best front courts in the conference in the Bulldogs. This is going to be a battle for Evansville, and Drake, a team that can really, really have an opportunity to put down a beating, make this an easy win. I don't think there's really anything easy for Drake just with their style. So tonight I should look what the projections are for Drake to win this game, the kind of point total. Right now they have Drake at 8.5. I like that. I thought for sure they were going to do another 14.5 or whatever, and I'd sit there and say Drake doesn't blow teams out, and then you'd see them blow them out by 20. But I like that 8.5. I would take that. I could see them winning by 10, I think, at most. So I like that. Right now, Drake definitely favored on the road against Evansville, but should be a fun one. The keys are as simple. Number one, we're going to change a little. Number one, don't worry about the history. And I don't think Ben McCollum will have this team thinking about the numbers and thinking about the history that could be made, because they haven't all season long. They have been very game-by-game focused, and that is something we respect out of Ben McCollum. Number two is just continue to grow that depth. And three, I'm really interested in seeing Isaiah Jackson. I mentioned on Monday about his health and how you're watching him, and it just doesn't look like he's 100%. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays tonight. And as well, just get the bench involved. Get Tavion Banks going and dominating against Evansville. But Drake, an opportunity to make history since 2008 with a win tonight, becoming the outright Missouri Valley Conference regular season champ. Should be a fun one. Game at 6 o'clock on ESPN+. I'll be watching it. Make sure to follow along on Twitter for our updates that we do throughout the game. Thank you to DKG Images for, if you're watching on YouTube or what you see on social media, the little highlights that we post. Those images coming from DKG Images of the Drake games from this past week. So thank you to Devin. As always, thank you to our listeners. Comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Really appreciate you guys so much. I will be back on Friday at 2 o'clock as we kind of break down the weekend ahead and also get set for where then we'll only be 6 days away from St. Louis. So have a great day. Make sure to follow along on YouTube for our updates tonight as Drake tries to complete history. We will see you guys tomorrow or Friday at 2.